firstly, one thing that comes up in the for-purpose sector that you really don't have in the for-profit sector is this sort of existential question of what is our purpose? And a number of my strategy related clients, that question's been front and center right from the beginning of the work, where we're working with the senior management team and with the board, and there's this real question of, well, why do we exist? What are we trying to achieve? The sort of existential question, which sort of then leads into all the things, the activities that we are doing, are they coherent? And again, how do they align with the purpose, assuming we've worked that out? And so that makes it, firstly, super interesting, and I think it's a really important question. Many organisations sort of have this inertia about, well, we exist because we've always existed, and in fact the board almost brings a position of, let's focus on continuing the organisation. Our role here as board members, it's not about driving performance and better outcomes for beneficiaries, it's almost more around, let's protect the organisation and ensure it continues to exist into the future. And I think if we're going to get improved performance, we need to make that a much sharper conversation at the board level and the senior management level, holding ourselves to account for driving to better outcomes for clients, because fundamentally that's why they all exist, for their end beneficiaries. So what I don't see is really a conversation about, I'll use the term competitors, other players doing similar things in the sector. So in the for-profit world, every strategy study is going to include a comparison to competitors on a number of different dimensions. It's going to be clearly financial performance, how are they performing both in terms of creating shareholder value, overall financial metrics, cash flows, etc. Compared to yourselves, and are they doing better, and if they are doing better, why is that, and what can we learn, and all those operational measures that kind of go with that. And typically in the not-for-profit world, that's sort of absent from the conversation about talking about competitors. There might be a little bit about, well, who else is doing something similar, and then the conversation stops. And rather than saying, well, actually, are others doing this better than us, and what can we learn from them? And I think that sort of competition, I think, is a good thing in terms of learning from each other and growing. It's not necessarily about beating the competition, but it's about, surely we want to learn from others. And either we're doing a great job and others can learn from us, or they're doing something better than us. It's hard to believe we're all doing exactly the same and achieving the same outcome. So I think there's a real sort of missed opportunity there, and that's something certainly in SVA in 2019 we really want to have a greater focus on, is, well, how can we kind of create this learning environment in the sort of ecosystems that our clients operate in, so they can learn from each other and challenge themselves to do better. I guess in terms of an actual example of where some of these issues all played through, so I had a client where they were providing counselling services as well as a series of sort of wraparound activities for their clients associated with the counselling services, so pathways to employment and sort of vocational training. And so part of their sort of thesis was in providing the counselling along with their pathways to employment, that was going to drive better outcomes for their clients. And the first thing was sort of interesting as we kind of started to unpack that and the coherency of that is the assumption that this wraparound service wasn't actually happening. Well, they had two quite distinct client groups that they were supporting, and one doing counselling and one doing vocational and pathways to employment training. So it kind of questioned the whole model that they had. And then that sort of then led to also not having really data about what outcomes they were achieving, which then sort of asked the question, well, if we don't know what outcomes we're achieving, how do we know whether we're doing a good job, whether we should exist, etc. And so we had a pretty interesting conversation with the board around that. And the other thing we sort of found is that they actually had a pretty healthy balance sheet, having had some property purchases in the past in capital cities in Australia. If you've held onto those in inner city areas over 30 or 40 years, there's been significant capital appreciation. So the really question was, they had this great financial asset, are they actually leveraging it for impact and for great outcomes? And so that led to a very powerful and impactful conversation with the board about really challenging themselves in the organisation to kind of get this. They still believed in that they had a role. They recognised they had to change the way they were operating, the wraparound service, being really distinct and clear about their therapeutic models, and then measuring their outcomes. And then committing that if they were unsuccessful in any of those, kind of getting the wraparound together, measuring their outcomes, being able to show they're doing something distinctive and better than competitors, then actually they come back to that existential question, which could be, maybe we shouldn't exist and we need to take our balance sheet and transfer our assets elsewhere.